Acknowledgement. The Town of Inuvik acknowledges that we are located on the traditional lands of the Gwich'in and Inuvialuit people of the Northwest Territories. We're grateful to be allowed the opportunity to learn, work, and live on Treaty 11 lands within the Gwich'in settlement area and the lands of the Inuvialuit final agreement. We respect the generous sharing of traditional wisdom and knowledge. We commit to honoring paths towards self-determination. Adoption of the agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Harder and Councillor Gallons. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item 3, declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. Anyone? Seeing none. Item 4.1. We have a presentation from Dylan Consulting on the community plan and zoning bylaw review. So I'll turn it over to the representatives from Dylan and I'll get out of your way.
We just have to turn them on the right side. There you go, and then push the speak button. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming together for this special meeting to hear us talk. The purpose of our visit here for the week and this meeting with you is to kind of do a planning 101. Myself, Amanda Bree Watson, planner from Inuvik, and Camila at the other end of the table is also community planner in Calgary, which you can introduce yourself in a second. We love planning, so I'm sorry if we get really nerdy with you. So please interrupt if there's any questions, comments. There's a little bit of a presentation, and then we're hoping that council will feel comfortable having a bit of like a roundtable conversation with us. So, Camila, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Camila Reardon-Strickman. I'm also a planner with Dylan Consulting, also nerdy and love urban planning. Coming to you from Calgary today, but I've worked with Amanda for about 3 years now, writing community plans and zoning bylaws. So just excited to be here today. Thanks for having us and excited for the conversation.
So yeah, just a really quick outline of what we hope to accomplish in the next little while. We've already introduced ourselves, hoping to learn a little bit more about yourselves. We're going to go over kind of the meeting and purpose, this meeting's purpose and the objectives of our plan. Just kind of talk about what community planning is. We'll talk about your community plan, that is the existing one for the town. Talk about your existing zoning bylaw. Talking a little bit next about a housing accelerator fund that is a program offered by CMHC, and we'll get into that a little bit ahead of time, but things cost money, so we found a source of money. And kind of what the next steps would be after we speak with you, after we've been here for our visit this week, and hopefully everybody's on the same page with what we go off to work on. We'll come back a little bit while later with some ideas to share with you, and hopefully from there we can develop new planning documents. So the other person who is on our team arriving until Thursday is Dustin Martin. He's also a community planner based in the Inuvik office, and there's quite a bit of experience working with communities throughout the Northwest Territories. Our contact information will pop up at the end if anybody wants to get a hold of us. And again, we're here all week. Thanks, Camila. Now that might be a little bit small, so I will probably read the words there. What I like to do is line up a purpose with an objective. So we came here with this meeting with really 4 intentional purposes. One is to do a refresher on community planning. Well, by the end of today's chat, hopefully everybody here has a better understanding of what a community plan is. The second purpose would be to talk about your community plan and zoning bylaw review. And again, hopefully by the end of our talk, the participants will understand what Dylan Consulting is here to do, what the project is we are doing with the town. The third purpose is to learn how updates can support the town in terms of growth and development. And where you want to change, what maybe your current community plan doesn't cover, or things that have changed within the town, economics, politics, environmental things that didn't get mentioned in the previous plan. So again, by the end of today, we hope that everybody understands how the community plan and zoning bylaw and this update will help the town with future growth and development. And lastly, number 4 is really to get input from you all. We're experts on process and pretty good writers, but you're experts on the community. So our objective is to get information from all of you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Oh, I'll just keep talking. So we have printed these out and they're on the bigger maps in front of you. And really just wanted to remind folks how big your municipal boundary is. You've got quite a bit of land, and again, both your community plan and zoning bylaw have been approved and have been in place since 2015. The territory does require a full review and update of the community plan every 8 years. So that's where we're basically at today. That's kind of one of the reasons the town put out an RFP and is asking for this review. And without getting too complicated into things, your community plan is adopted by bylaw. After second reading and before third reading is given, it does go up to the minister for their approval. Your zoning bylaw does not. So one of the things that we do as planners when we're talking to folks about your community plan is we will be meeting with your neighbors. Who are invalid, because of the immaculate approval by the minister. They do the duty to consult, which is consulting with First Nations. But as planners, we think it's important to get everybody's input early. So we will be starting some chats with them this week. Again, I do apologize that this is a little bit small. Kind of just talking about the project timeline and overview. We're basically where the dog sleds are. We're in visit number 1. We had a kickoff meeting a couple weeks ago. After this visit, we're going to go away and we're going to write some stuff down and come up with some options for the draft community plan and draft zoning bylaw. Once we've got some stuff on paper, we will be coming back to the community and presenting some updated maps and documents to yourselves, as well as holding some community meetings and getting input from as many people as we can. And then based on the input we get from there, we will finalize the community plan and zoning bylaw, and council should have it ready in front of them for review and adoption this winter. Because it is a public process, I can't guarantee that timeline, depending on how active your community is. They have things that we need to go back and add, and also because if the community plan goes to the minister, from the time we give it second reading to the time that the minister approves it and you get third reading is completely beyond my control. Any questions or concerns so far? Okay, I keep talking.
I guess one question.
Yes, yeah.
Natasha Kulikowski, counselor. The meeting on Wednesday that the community comes and gives input in,
Yeah.
is that the only opportunity for them in the process, in the line? Or
Not
what?
at all.
Okay.
Our next visit, this fall, sorry, thank you. The next visit this fall, we hope to have a proper formal public meeting. Maybe we'll book a big room, have a presentation, have some poster boards on the wall that ask people what they think of some of the things we've actually come up with.
Okay.
But this meeting is more, on Wednesday is more of people know the project is happening and, you know, they see things, they hear things, we'd like to know.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. So I'm not gonna, again, bore you to death, I'm not gonna read all of the words off of this slide, but basically, community planners, look at plans, but our plans are not in isolation. We look at other documents that the community has. In this case, I don't know, and this is part of our initial kickoff is finding out what there is. To inform our plans, so things like drainage, fire safety, the council's strategic plan. We want to make sure that what we're coming up with for the next 20 years, 25 years, is in line with the good work that's already being done by this community council. And I guess I'll leave it at that, but really all of those documents inform the community plan, which we hope is a valuable tool for helping you make decisions. And again, I'm not going to read this out. I've kind of been to meetings many times over the years and why people want to get involved. Well, sometimes they actually really like what they have and they don't want to lose it. A lot of times it's for their kids. They want to make places better for their future, want to have a nicer area for their kids. Particularly with climate change impacting our communities, environmental issues are definitely coming up. Sometimes through this process, it's an opportunity to get people that are involved and aware with what's happening in City Hall. People often think there's nothing being done, but once they actually go to a meeting, they realize that their concerns are probably in process and being addressed. Yeah, so I won't read them all, but the one I come across probably most often is having housing issues. In the north, that seems to be a common theme. So we tried to find local pictures. I'm not sure how dated these are, but again, when we're thinking about land use planning, we're thinking about things like your transportation network, your government buildings, whether it's your schools and your town office, your fire hall, your healthcare services, libraries, your amenities. So we look at basically anything, any type of activity that could be taking place in your community, and trying to work with people to figure out where and how that happens in the future. And I will not be reading all of this to you, but basically, again, the community planner is the high level document. We currently have one. If you're looking for the legislation that we follow, it would be under the Community Planning and Development Act. You guys don't even have to memorize it. Neil and I are pretty good at making sure we follow all the right parts. But it does tell us what needs to be in community plans, so we work with folks to get that in there. And I'm not going to read it, but basically, it provides sort of objectives and policies that should help inform council when they're making decisions until the next review is done, really. The bylaw is a little bit different. It has to follow your community plan, but I like to call it kind of your day-by-day playbook. When you've got somebody coming in looking to build a shed or put a new house in, it will tell them where on the property, how far back from the road, how tall things can be. It really gets into the nitty-gritty about how those approved types of uses are to be constructed. And what I really like about zoning lot bylaws, although a lot of people like to put lots of rules in them, I try to put few rules in them so that they're not an administrative nightmare, but make it very clear about if you want to do something, how it happens, set some expectations for everybody. And then I stole this from the GNWT. They like to talk about some bigger types of plans, but the planning process is pretty similar. You start with all the partners and you gather information. So today we're starting with council. We're going to be talking to different stakeholder groups over here, gathering as much information as we can. As I said, we're going to go away and write some stuff, and we're going to come back to you with some options. And then based on what people like, we'll go away and draft that plan. And then really it starts to get into the approval process, which is council and the minister. So this is a map from your existing community plan. I think we put up some big ones, some big ones out and put them on your table in front of you. As we talk to you today, feel free to write all over the documents, or you and I can try to write on that screen and take some images. But the map in front of you is the map that council and staff should be following today. And this is the opportunity to say, well, is it still right? Or what should be changed, or should we look at it in more detail? Very, very quickly, and I can't read so good. Purple is industrial, yellow is residential, red is commercial, and green is probably like the parks and open space. And I'm sorry if I'm going super quick. Anybody not seen this map before? That's the best news today. Okay, great. So if there's no other questions, I'll just keep going. So the things we're gonna be asking you to think about, or everybody as we're talking about this, are things that again are in that. If there's gonna be future residential, what direction does it go? Is the commercial in the right area, or should we be trying to promote commercial in multiple parts of town? Are the industrial areas in the right spot? Is that the direction we want them to grow? When we think about some policies and what we're writing, what is the town interested in for economic development? What is the town interested in for parks and recreation? Looking at transportation, so not only your vehicles, but I don't consider vehicles quads and ATVs, I don't know what they are, but like, how are you get people getting around all those? Are there enough trails for people that want to walk or ride their bicycles? All those kind of connected things. Infrastructure, so your utilidor, very, very unique for us. As we're working on a project like this, with utilidor, so understanding the dynamics of that kind of sets a little bit more rigidly where your development is happening. And maybe there could be some advantages to looking at how that connects and looking at your trails and connections. I don't know. Again, we understand that climate change is impacting this community up north. So are there existing policies? And if not, what do we want to frame them in? What is our vision and goals for the community with regard to that? And there could be other things that I haven't thought about. That's not over to you. You want to do that one?
No, let's skip it.
Okay. All right, I'll let you read the questions. And just point out that we've got the kind of sheet with questions as well.
Thanks, Amanda. Everybody can hear me? So thanks, Amanda, for giving us a little bit of a background of why we're here and what we're doing today. Now we've developed a series of questions that we're hoping can just start to spur some conversation about the community and to help us impact the future plans. So we can just go through them. We can see how the conversation goes, but hoping that everybody can just tell us what they think about some things about the community as we look into the future in the next 25 years or so. And so that's the very first question we have. So what types of businesses and industries should the town be looking at developing in the next few years?
Restaurants, bars, and adult entertainment. We have none of that here.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't have to be bars, but adult entertainment, more sports for adults. Maybe the arena open year round, stuff like that.
Mhm.
More kid friendly features as well.
Can you use your mic so we're not-
Oh, yeah. So maybe like movie theaters, restaurants, maybe a bowling facility. We need to focus more around kids in the community.
Mhm.
They're the futures.
I would add coffee shops, spaces for small businesses, somewhere where you could have a storefront as well as a back or a closed rooms for things like dog grooming, veterinary skills, hairdressers, spaces that maybe people could rent for short terms if they're coming up to do things like tattoo or massage. If it's not a fully permanent business, then an opportunity for a space to be used here in town. We're locksmithing, we're gonna need funeral services, like these are all businesses that Inuvik has had or has right now, but will be changing in the future. And so I think those are the kinds of things we need to keep an eye on too, making sure that businesses that have been long established have an opportunity to continue once the original proprietors are moving on or passing on. Thanks.
Yeah, so having spaces for businesses that aren't just stuck at one use, but they can be transferable. Any considerations with tourism and types of businesses to support that?
To a degree, I think. Some of us are a bit of cart before horse. We've got some issues, including stuff that's been brought up, stuff like restaurants, some very basic infrastructure that I think we'd like to encourage in order to foster that tourism end of things. So yeah, so certainly some tourism friendly end of things. But I think what's really important is getting outside dollars invested commercially in your community. We haven't had any new builds in this community with any outside dollars besides government or internal indigenous government dollars, in my 16 years here. And we do see that in some other NWT communities, that there is outside development happening, minimal being put up in Hay River, things like this. One of our issues is that we don't really have commercial space here that's affordable. So for instance, the one space that's sort of suited for a coffee shop is prohibitive because you can't make the overhead just selling coffee and stuff, sandwiches. So we don't have any buildings that are sort of modern enough, efficient enough that you can actually afford to run some businesses. We've got some very old infrastructure here that costs an arm and a leg to heat in winter, etc. And so small businesses often are a bit handcuffed in being able to even start. Even though we've got empty space in town, there's still costs there that makes it often prohibitive. So to your tourism question, I think there's a lot, like I said, I think that I am one of these cart before horses people that sits there and says, yeah, we do. Tourism is certainly within our 25-year plan is on the horizon. We've invested a lot of money in it. But from my personal perspective, I think we have a few priorities that we need to put in place before we start chasing some infrastructure on that end. We've already done some great stuff with our visitor center and stuff like this. And thank you.
I'll just leave the floor open if there are any other comments to this question.
It's Councillor Miro here. If I could just comment, I think something we need to plan long-term for is a museum. We don't have anything capturing the history of Inuvik.
Thank you for that, taking note of that. And we can circle back to this question too, but okay, moving to the next one. Yeah, so moving off from businesses, what other types of residential development would you like to see in your town? This could be detached dwellings, multifamily, duplexes. What does your community need?
As much as I would, I'm kind of against it, but I think maybe we might need another opening for a trailer park in our community, because it's one of the more affordable housing issues that we could deal with. I'm not really a big fan of them, but at the same time, it is affordable.
Just while we're looking at zoning and all the options kind of that are out there in the world now, I think at least having a conversation on what tiny homes could look like in Inuvik and whether those would be on the utilidor system or whether they'd have to be on some sort of pump in, pump out system. And then also what our zoning bylaw allows for being off grid within the community and whether you can do a pump in, pump out when you're in the town major. And I think those two things could kind of be looked at the same time. Would we allow multiple tiny homes on one property? Could they have a shared system of some sort? I think are kind of the ways of the future that some building is going. And so it might be good for us to have something in our bylaws that kind of accepts that. Um. I think opportunities, it does mention it in the old plan, but maybe even pushing for opportunities where people could have rental units, like residential rental units on a top floor of a building and then a commercial space in the bottom, making sure that that building gets as much use as it can per like what's being built there. And, you know, saving energy where you can. We definitely need more housing in our community, and that includes everything from standalone houses to apartments. So that might be a solution that can help take a little bit of weight off. Do I have anything else on housing? I think just including in our forethought of everything that comes forward is thinking of accessible spaces. Just the way that Inuvik was built so many years ago, and it's not necessarily the most accessible place, but as new builds come in, things are certainly getting better and better. And so just keeping that top of mind as well, not only for our residents who are getting older, but for visitors who come, and we want to make sure that they can access all the spaces that they want to visit. So, thank you.
It's Councillor Miro. I really see a need for multifamily housing, whether it's rentals or condos.
And I think I would like to see building apartment for employment, like people with moving from South to come to like Inuvik. Those building apartments will be for specifically for maybe like student employment, accessible for specific people. Yeah.
Turn it on. It's not.
Nine.
Oh, it's not plugged in.
This one.
Yes.
It's okay, can you?
Okay.
Alana can't hear you if you're not on. Oh,
So I'll ask the new guy question, where is our seniors lodging in the town, if you have any, and do we need more of it?
I'll take that one if you want. Or
It's
Alana
Councillor
might.
Miro, I can answer that for you. So, Housing NWT owns 2 buildings specifically for seniors. The Bertha Allen building, which has 8 units, and there is a second building that has 24 units, but there's definitely a need for more seniors housing, whether it is through Housing NWT, which we're not likely to build big numbers, or just basically people building units that are accessible to seniors.
And that plus long-term care at the hospital. There is, GNWT does have a plan of some sort to put in a second long-term care facility, but again, that's a care facility as opposed to a seniors apartment building. And certainly we could use them.
Well, certainly, I think we have many more priorities than what I'm going to suggest right now on the housing end. Executive level housing is really needed. Trying to recruit sort of senior level folks to move up to Inuvik is challenging when we do have housing issues, and certainly sort of that executive level housing, whether it's on a build to sell or it's on an executive condo building or something like that people can fly in, fly out, because a lot of like I said, a lot of our senior staff aren't living in the community, and that certainly affects how they do business in our community as well. Thank you.
Sorry, Amanda here. Can I just ask a question for clarification? Are there any secondary units or suites or granny flats or carriage units, whatever, we've got all that many different names, but are there properties in town that have like a single family house and then like a secondary unit been built on there?
Couple.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
Is that something that would be in favor of, or?
Yeah, I mean, personally, yes. I think having like a mother-in-law suite or that type of situation where you can you know, have a mortgage and then also have somebody pay you some rent to help you pay your mortgage is always a benefit. And finding that oftentimes if it's a single person that's looking for a small unit, that's the kind of unit that works perfectly for them. So yeah, I would be in favor of that. Like I say, anywhere where we can do combos of commercial and residential, or yeah, having a small unit on your own place, things like that, I think are advantages to the homeowner, encourages people to buy homes, and then also you know, gives that small space opportunity for someone looking to rent. So yeah, definitely.
Getting back to that question, if we were to go that route, then I think that we would have to start to increase the lot sizes. Because our lots are pretty small in the community, so I think we'd have to definitely look at proposing some stipulation bylaw where we could increase the size of them
Yeah.
for those types of zones.
Okay, and just before moving on, from residential, is there any desire to have any design guidelines for, home types? Sometimes you see that when you are looking at multifamily homes, for instance.
Do you mean the requirement of like having different designs on one street? Is that what you mean? Or
Yeah, or different materials being used to maintain a certain standard of aesthetic, landscaping standards. Sometimes some municipalities have different colors. Just looking for these types of things. Is that appropriate in your community?
It's just, I think that sometimes can cause a bit of division at times. And yeah,
Yeah, there are pros and cons to having it, so.
I understand obviously some, but you know, I really wouldn't want to go overboard on anything like that, and let people. Yeah, let people live.
Sounds good.
I think the current one has the line about the just having different designs on one street, like, so you, even if every fifth house was the same design, in between that is different ones, so that it's not just a,
Cookie cutter.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So now that we've talked high level about commercial and residential, looking specifically at the central town site, what types of businesses, units, or dwellings are appropriate in this area of your community? Should there be unique considerations for your commercial core?
I think if we wind up talking building heights, I'd like to see restrictions put certainly on where they could build, so that we're not putting up 4 or 5 stories down by the river, blocking people's views, that type of thing, so there'd be a demarcation line if anything like that would happen in the future. Multi-story, basically, buildings.
So that,
I don't want my view blocked, what I'm trying to say.
yeah, so in the old one, again, there is, it says you can't build higher than 3 stories. And I made comments about because of the view, and then also I think there is some stipulation because the ladder truck can only reach so high as well, right? So
105 feet.
yeah, so, and I mean, and when I'm saying apartments on top of commercial, like, I mean, like just literally like, no, let's say the Mo's building that floor and then having a set of apartments on top of it, like the old liquor store building or 66 Franklin, right? Downstairs is a usable commercial space and upstairs is apartments, but not multi-floors of apartments. Yeah, yeah,
Just thinking 25 years, who knows?
yeah, oh,
Like
for
a what?
sure,
Yeah.
yeah, just, yeah.
Yeah, and regulations can always change as the community changes and their different needs.
So I think the first answers to the first questions were adult entertainment, bars and things like that. Would those be some uses that you'd only want to see like in your downtown, or are we okay with those being anywhere? And that's the kind of thing we're trying to figure out, is if there's certain things that you only want in certain places.
I'd like to see some flexibility just because the downtown core can grow, can expand. So I'd say let's build some flexibility in so that if the downtown core gets bigger, we can adapt.
Okay.
Same for the other question about residential homes. You know, if someone can make a viable business from a home and they purpose it that way, then let's see about that, or vice versa. So I like the idea of just maximizing the space, one or the other.
We seem pretty limited as to the downtown core right now as it is, so I think we need future expansion, absolutely. We need more convenience stores, fuel stations. Competition's good, so I think that we should have another grocery store somewhere in town, but I mean, if we're looking at a 25-year span, I mean, I'd like to see us wrapped around the bypass, to be honest with you, country residential, more country residential by the, by Shaw Lake. I'd love to see a new Canada Games facility like they have in Whitehorse here. You know, these are, I mean, if we're thinking big. But yeah, we can't just focus on our downtown core, because otherwise it's not gonna grow, we have to continue to just compile, so.
Yeah, and there's certainly a balance between where you want to see your development, if it's on the core or along major highways, so, yeah, it's something we're gonna have to look at. And I think that's our next question. Oh, no, it's on the utilidor. Yeah, looking to see what barriers and challenges or opportunities there are with the utilidor. Yeah, I mean, is there alternatives if they exist? Yeah.
And I think the big one is cost, whether it's materials or whether it's where we can put it, with climate change and permafrost and how that affects, where we can run the lines. And then the cost to maintain it.
So if we're looking at expansion of Inuvik, would the utilidor also be expanding, or are there other opportunities for servicing?
I think there's other alternatives for servicing, we have more, lots available. I think that's kind of a given, because it's just due to the upfront cost that the town has to put out for the utility. It's a wonderful convenience for everyone on it. But realistically, we're gonna expand the community and we have to be open-minded. Be a little more prepared to have pump in pump outs. We choose to live here, so it's after that.
Mhm. Any other comments or thoughts on this?
I'll just comment on everything. I think like, as a community pride factor, it is something that's really cool about Inuvik is like, you know, it's an engineering marvel that we have this utilidor system and that we were able to build this community where we did and all of that. And I mean, there's also the point that it can be quite ugly. We don't have any back alleys because of it, right? Like a lot of, when people compare a yard in Inuvik to somewhere else, they don't realize that you only have one side access to your yard, mostly because the backside is utilidor. So I like barriers and challenges is just the look of the thing, right? I mean, the updated ones look better. They're closer to the ground. They don't take as much space as the old one did. But we're still 20 years out from completing that replacement everywhere in town. So if there are alternatives that are actually like an option, I would love to see them, but I just, you know, historically this has been the option, and so it's interesting to wonder if there are alternatives other than just pump in, pump out, which I think should be an option in some cases, but as a homeowner and as a resident, I much prefer not having to deal with tanks and just, you know, flushing or running the sink and having that go away from my home instead of collecting it and then waiting for someone to come and get it. So I would say that's certainly a positive about the utilidor system. And then with the water and having the water treatment plant that we do, I think is pretty awesome, and having good, clean drinking water for our whole community is also something we can be proud of, and it comes to us through those utilidors too, so I just think that, yes, it's kind of cumbersome and those kinds of things, but it's also, it's maybe even something we can highlight more often and saying, this is the wonder of engineering that is Inuvik's utilidor system.
Sorry, speaking as the fire person here, the idea of expanding particularly residential areas beyond the utilidor also has an impact on our ability to access water.
Sort of use the utilidors.
Yeah, there are hydrants imagine the utilidor as the municipal water system with just one right, and then like the houses. So that would have to be a consideration if you are looking at that, either a water access point, or considerations for what is going to be built outside of the utility system, particularly. So that is one aspect of it. Also, from a insurance side, the insurance companies do ask homeowners, particularly if they're new builds, whereabouts is your nearest fire department, so it does have to be on insurance as well. From the peanut gallery.
No, thank you so much. I think that just highlights that there are pros and cons to every system, and those will have to be weighed. Okay, if there's no more comments on this, move on. Yeah, looking at Airport Road, what's the vision here? What opportunities are there for expansion or new development?
Don't. Many years of people asking to build commercial or residential housing, this was Airport Road, that's what we should be looking at since you're not going anywhere. But Airport Road seems to be a nice place to have acreages. A lot of people want to own acreages and live on their business land. That's something we don't offer. Something in our bylaws we don't offer. It's something that's been rejected in our council report. A lot of people are interested in that. It's expensive to move out there, live out there, build out there, but there is people interested in that. Live with their business, live out there at their shops, much like several other communities. Of course, it's all water, it's all pump in water and sewer, but some people like to live in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Airport Road, if you have your own acreage up there, it could be in the middle of nowhere. A lot of people look at that. A lot of people don't want to start a business out in an industrial area because there's rules out there, you can't live up there. But we have like Airport Road, your own acreage, your own like box safe company, whatever, wants to live out and have a shop, much like Shell Lake on a bigger concept, right? Just like what the bypass should be housing. We have our green area up there, but Airport Road would be a lot of people would be interested in acreages. Big money development.
I think something that we're going to get thinking about maybe a car dealer over there to sell truck and pickup. People drive to Whitehorse to go buy their car. So there's something that reminds me of the future and how their car dealers.
And I don't know if this would fall under industrial or community use in parks, or maybe a dual use zone. But we do need an area to create an ATV trail park, perhaps I know years ago there was a request to put a paintball down by the old airport down here, but it's an industrial area and we start getting the zoning issues there. So something where it's, like I said, and I don't know, maybe these things can live in industrial zoned areas because they're, but I do think if some of Airport Road is zoned that way, again, sort of going back to the acres, there's great expanses of land out there that's relatively flat and can be developed into a bike park or things like that. But that's where the big spaces might be for those types of opportunities. So whether that's a rezone or not.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some opportunities for large lot businesses, whether, you know, it's for paintball and recreation or for industrial uses or some type of mixture of residences. So having some type of opportunity there.
Yeah, I think there's access out there and it's a long-term road. And it's a road that people have to use when they're there to get from the airport or kind of looks at Whitehorse. So there's lots of traffic. Okay.
Try and balance notes and then I do this. And I know we touched on tourism a little bit at the beginning of this, but is there anything else to consider tourism the next 25 years and how you are looking to expand and what other goals town has?
I think maybe potentially another campground site on over by the airport road. In that vicinity. With more amenities.
It's Councilor Miro. I think we need to consider where we're going to develop more hotels or where they could be developed in the future because the current ones are full, which does limit both business and tourism.
I would say adding things like Airbnb or those kinds of options into kind of, I don't know if that goes in our zoning bylaw or where it goes, but to allow those things in the community, and they're probably happening anyway, but I know that in some places, you know, it can be quite restrictive. Also, I think when it comes to tourism, we've tried to mention to the college in the past how good it would be to have some programming in hospitality. And so if we could be a kind of tourism and hospitality hub for the whole region would be incredible to see some great customer service happen here. Restaurants, bars, hotels, having that an industry of people working to offer those services where right now we're struggling to get people. So having the education component kind of come into a working component would be incredible. The hotels for sure, I think, and this may not necessarily be a town thing, but working with our GNWT partners to get more signage on the roads, more language, more identifying lake names and things like that would be a good start for the area. And a lot of the visitors who come and see us in Inuvik are on their way to Tuck and then coming back again. And so if they can, you know, tell us that they stopped by the end of Jimmy Lake and they saw this happen, then we'd be able to understand what they're talking about. Same, even things like out on Airport Road, there you can't see where you turn onto Shell Lake. It just all of a sudden is there. So having some better signage on turnouts and things, and again, I think it's probably GNWT responsibility, but it is partnership between us and them to have those kinds of things in place. So yeah, to just making it easier for tourists to find the things that we do have, because we have a lot to offer and people don't necessarily know about it or don't just see it as they drive into town. And so just making everything apparent for folks would be great.
I think the new public art project, the last one. Well, we have some stuff on the Northmont wall right now, but our last big formal project was the Western Arctic Visitors Center. And that was, we went to about 22 years ago. You know, we are in some ways a bit of a dusty town. So just coming in and just even being able to walk around, I'm trying to put together on a business end a photo walk, but even that and sort of limited with some of the attractions. And so further to that, you know, and I don't necessarily know if this is certainly not necessarily zoning, but we do have a need for evening tourist activities here. So whether that means, you know, some sort of expansion on the existing pavilion infrastructure there, where we can have an indoor space for evening use. Again, we need to get into something where there's some low cost options for small scale entrepreneurs, tourism operators, et cetera, to be able to participate. Yeah, so I don't know exactly if that's zoning or not, but certainly it is on sort of overall community plan.
Yeah, they interact with each other and the community plan leads into zoning bylaw and other areas of the community. So it's definitely something that can be touched on. So Amanda, can you focus on time if we need to speed things up? Yeah, oh, sorry.
Just going back to tourism for a second, I think we did that as well as outfitters. So if we were to look at programming for hospitality and tourism, then it's worth it to put outfitters as well, so. Again, being a hub for a region. Whether it's outfitters in the communities outside of Inuvik or those based in Inuvik, it just helps the region as a whole too.
Absolutely.
Because folks that come through to go to Arctic or the Delta.
Any other thoughts on this? Yeah, and I believe this was maybe one comment during our kickoff. Was there any opportunities to expand or make changes to the cemetery?
If we have no choice in that.
So is that capacity?
It's not at capacity, but it's getting close again. And it does need to expand. Yeah, it's quite cool.
What would we be looking at, like a new location?
Right over here. No, that's reality. It's gonna go over that way a bit. If you look at where it is, it's gonna go towards the lake a bit more. But it does have to be expanded. It does have to be done sooner than later.
So at this point, if you just put it on the map and again, identify it for people, so there's that expectation that it's growing. And or find an alternate location for like a second.
I don't think that the jump to be able to show this located yet, but it is, of course, in the future. You probably have enough for say a few years there now, then you're gonna have to, when you can expand it to go for another 10 years. Just going off of when we expanded last time was about 10 years ago.
So did anybody ever talk about another location ever come up?
No, never heard of a discussion of that.
So that will be something that's going to start deciding. There's something I can sense. Area we can gather.
I think if you look at this colored map, the cemetery, if you look at the green space around the cemetery, there is quite a bit of space there. And I know that our director of Public Works likely has some ideas about which directions that would go, so certainly well towards the river probably, yeah, or towards the lake, I mean.
Yeah, you're right, that's actually.
Yeah, so.
Correct about that a little while ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I think there is still quite a bit of space there, but it's certainly something that on a 25-year plan might need to be in there if there's an alternative location. Also things like, I know that, I don't know if it happened, I haven't been out there, but there was talk of getting a big sign printed with a new map of where graves are and who, names and everything, so that when families go out, it's easier for them to find family members. I think anything we can do there to accommodate or welcome people to keep care of their spaces. I don't know if you folks have been to Europe very often or at all, but like if you go to a cemetery in Poland, like each plot is like a garden. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place to go and, pay respects to your family or your friend or whatever it is. And it's a beautiful space to sit in. And this might be a controversial thing to say, but I almost think if we could put eventually some sort of environmental thought into not allowing plastic fake flowers to be in the cemetery and covered in plastic for perpetuity, Maybe we can, work with local retailers to bring in real flowers so that once those have, finished their life, that they can be incorporated into composting or the dump or the solid waste site or whatever it is, as opposed to becoming a part of the pollution in the north. As much as the sentiment behind those wreaths and things like that are very important to families in the moment, it is a garbage problem. And when those plastics start to break down in the sun and blow everywhere, like that's going in the river, that's going in the lakes. So maybe that's an idea that we need to look at, is how do we create a more environmentally friendly cemetery when it comes to things that we add to the ground? Thanks.
And just you one more picnic gallery. I just, Kurt, you might be able to speak on it, but I don't know if there's ever been a thought for the cemetery or the cultural thing for columbariums. Because I know recently, like we've been doing a lot of bereavement, services and feasts at the complex, and it seems quite a bit now that there's a lot of cremation. A lot of people are getting cremated, but then I would imagine if they're getting buried here, they're burying them in a plot. As opposed to if that seems to be the way things are going, would the columbariums be part of the solution for space?
We currently do a few library. Area top of up and by the step of Peter, it's got there. There is some areas up there we currently have done stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how much spots are left, but we have done it there. We just done one recently in month. But that's something you'll have to look at to see how many are left. I don't know how many are.
No, these are stacked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like you can put quite a few in, and they're really nice,
Yeah,
but
yeah, there's room to build those in the west side. The west side.
yeah. Just a thought.
No, thank you. Okay, there's no other comments. So again, looking at the future and looking at the town's cultural and recreational assets a bit more closely, what are some areas of improvement for the next 25 years?
You're all talking about the community plan and adding all these houses, hotels, infrastructures, buildings, on and on and on, which right now we're at capacity with the lots we have for sale with our water and sewer infrastructures, which in every strategic plan, we're gonna have to upgrade our water and sewer. Like our sewage treatment, we need their sewage treatment upgraded. They are gonna need a bigger water plant or add-ons. I don't know if there is a room to add on to the one we have or for supply. And the other thing is we have to look at is our river and our low water levels. So we talked about adding all these houses and hotels and all the stuff I just said. And we have to look at our own infrastructure in the community, if we can supply. And what the costs be. I mean, with growth, there's always more tax saving, so you can afford it. But it's one of those things that's really have to be seriously looked at. So we just got a new water plant that costs us a lot. Now we're looking at doing a sewage treatment plant, and if you look on our map where our sewage is straight now, it's part of the industrial area. And what capacity is going to take and what capacity is going to hold. So the major ones, ice.
Yeah, with development, there come some costs. It has to be financial to the municipality, and also waste, just dealing with that too. There's a cost for that. So it's a balance for sure.
And the problem with the cost of that is, do we retain residents or do we have flow through? And when you have flow through, sometimes it doesn't really cover the cost. So that's something like, if you start adding hotels and everything, something seriously, we have to look at it all much.
Just kind of interrupting and reiterating, so mentioned earlier about the recreation or ATV bikes and stuff like that, so that might be an open space, park the trail. Definitely understanding what happens for the other lots. As we drove in, we saw the golf course with driving range. Is that something you like, you want tomorrow? Is that, yeah.
Okay, I was part of building the golf course, and building a lot of stuff, but yeah, the golf course, if we could, honestly, if we could make that a 9-hole golf course. Anytime in the future, if the town could step forward, the government or whoever to build 9 holes, you would attract a lot of people at the 24-hour sunlight golf course. The attraction with 24-hour sunlight, but only 3 holes and have to do them 3 times.
They have 6.
Yeah, 6 holes now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, whatever holes you got. If we could get 9 holes and do 2 rounds, make it 18, you could attract a lot more. And if we brushed it down more and we took care of it more, and all kinds of maintenance. We're slacking a little last couple of years of COVID.
Is there anything else that people have ever brought up, like you were literally drove as we came in, I saw a fire tower, and I was like, oh, we were good.
Zip line.
Zip line right down there. But I mean, like, have other people had, getting some paintball and some other, other kind of things you see that could happen on the land?
I think, you know, we had a trail that went around the whole community once upon a time, like you have a Blue Lake Trail. If you have a trail going down the bypass, our bypass out here is a big problem with people jogging on it and all dusty. Now that we've brushed it 200 feet back, I think if we made a trail along the tree line, they walk their dogs, there'd be a lot more. Like a whole trail, a community trail that goes around the whole community, through the community. But you see, we're a kind of unique place, our trails have to be walker friendly, ATV friendly, snowmobile friendly.
Bear-proof.
Well, you're never gonna get rid of bears. Bears, we're pretty lucky. We don't have any bear problems at the moment. But we had a trail that went and took advantage of all our outer skirts for our community. I just think it's covers safety. Covers sports, athletic, exercise, it just covers so many things. You know, that people really, really need in an isolated community.
The thing too is once you build those trails outside of the town, you have an access point too, to go out into. And I know we talked about different ideas for the golf course and using the landscape. But if you can get people out there, then they're gonna use it. That's the critical thing. And if you wanna look at growing the town, families, especially families. And there's more things for families to do than they're just gonna stay here because there's things for them to do. Apart from one. I think that, we compare art and stuff. We're not great, we're hoping to go to first for the flock.
I think one thing we need to concentrate on or be cognizant of is that we have what was once a very tremendous rec facility, that's just old. It's got some issues. Both the actual building itself. We have a concession that I know that we're doing work on, we're waiting for some availabilities, but certainly have a concession that's been closed for the last 3 or 4 years. And that building really was, when the concession was there and open regularly, it became a meeting spot within the community. It was a place where you would hang out a bit longer than just being there to watch your kids' hockey game, because it became a social thing. You could have your coffee first thing in the morning watching hockey. And we just haven't had that in 3 or 4 years. So I think there are some lower hanging fruits that we can sort of attempt to bandage a little bit. But our reality is that we have issues with the pool. wood. We have a building that's wonky, we have a concession that's not really there. We have needs in our community, requests in our community for things like running tracks and things like this. So as part of any type of, certainly a 25-year plan, we need to be thinking longer term on how we come up with $100 million for a new rec facility, you know. But I think some of that planning needs to start happening sooner rather than later, because it will be a 5-10 year adventure in finding those funds to be able to do something like that. So when we talk about building on or improving, like I said, I think there's some advantages that we can certainly do right now if we just paid a little bit, you know, if we can just sort of zero in on them and deal with that stuff. You know, we know we have a wonderfully, you know, recreational and social community. You know, if we can just give them the tools, we'll see it back again a little bit.
Yeah, there definitely be a balance between doing the big ticket, fancy, you know, shiny item versus, you know, fixing 10 little things, for sure. And just driving around the community, you know, there's a lot of great, wonderful community parks and playgrounds here that almost all of them had kids on them when we were driving around this afternoon. So there are features in your community that are being used, and that's great. Okay, yeah.
I was gonna say,
Oh, yeah, that's.
Come on, I just came to you. Seriously.
So it seemed like it was really well used, like there's tons of people.
part of that used, but there's low water rates.
I've been down there today, tearing it up, don't worry about it, you get lots of things.
Is it because of the water further away?
Yeah, it's just low water.
Low water.
It's just, it happens. 20, 30 years ago, we had the same problem. It went away, hopefully it doesn't. But honestly, you're talking about our recreation and about our asset there. I think we should be looking at how we can extend using it. Our hockey shuts down in March. There's still snow till the end of April, May. There are, our curling can go longer, our hockey can go longer. There can be other sports room ball can be introduced. We have to look at how we use our rec center. And instead of, to me, it looks like it's a 6 months a year thing. We only use it 6 months in a year. And we have to figure out what's the cost to run it longer. And should do our checks and balance if it's worth it. We don't use it long enough. Yeah, and yes, it's getting old and yes, it has its issues, but at the same time, if we're not going to use it to its capacity, we're wasting it. Seriously, hockey's done March and there's April. And I know we're a community of outsiders in April. Like I'm one of the guys like, don't call me in April and definitely don't call me in May. I'm gone, right? Because we're a lot of hunters and trappers and everything, but there's not everyone does that. Not everyone's on the land, not everyone's small deals. So we're getting a very diverse community where we have to look at our rec center to extend its longevity and to extend programs for people that want to use it longer. Like I said, I think we use it 6 months a year.
But at the same time, we don't wanna wait until it's reached its capacity before we actually act on creating a new one. So, like I said before, we could potentially look at having a facility like the Canada Game Center, which has everything for everyone. Just think of the attractions that we get. Canada, you know, only part of their games have always want to be here. We could be that sport hub for the NWT. We had a facility like that. Great elements, all your facility.
And we need hotels too.
That's
It
all comes together.
I'll just I'd like to add to the boat dock or the boat launch, just things like maybe, so it wasn't, I think it was an experiment that we put in adult playground down there and like, I think kids climb on it and no one else touches it. So maybe it's an opportunity to put in a kids playground down there as opposed to that one. Our playgrounds themselves, I think, are great. Like you're very right. Kids are in them all the time. I'm lucky enough to live on a playground, and now that the field is back on Rayon, like there's kids out there playing baseball every night till 1, 2 in the morning, which I don't care if kids are out playing baseball till 1 or 2 in the morning. They're so much better being in the park together having fun than out causing trouble in town. So I think even if now we have the 2 field spaces downtown, we've got the one on Rayon. If there's an opportunity to have another field of some sort or a field house of some sort, might be another great thing that we could have. Where you could then have, you know, field sports, but then you could also have them go in the winter. Yeah, the running track, like, these are pie in the sky dream visions at this point, but I mean, maybe it is possible to have those things come true. And the more people that come and visit and put money into our community, the more opportunities we have to build those kinds of things. So, yeah, I would love to see more rec. I'd love to see more recreation leaders. Again, talking about the college and the NWTRPA, having more people get trained in how to lead recreation programs, whether it's for kids or adults, would be outstanding. Things like summer day camp coming back, again, you're grabbing teenagers when they're at that 15, 16, 17-year-old, their minds are ready to be molded and they get to be leaders in their community with the kids. So having things like summer day program, I think would be amazing to build those future community leaders again, and the people who have the skills to go out and provide customer service would be super important. So bringing it back to the kids and making them the ones that are doing this work on the ground while we're making the decisions in the background, I think is key.
If we create the facilities, the capacity will come.
While we're on the topic of rec, I wanted to remind everybody about these. As the newcomer, when I come into town, your road that comes from the airport with that 9-hole beautiful golf course with the big pond and the fountain going up in the center. I think you need a ski hill right behind there. Like, I honestly did think it was a ski hill.
I was just gonna mention that.
When I first got to town, I thought that run in the forest was actually your ski hill, and they're not expensive to build. And if you're gonna bring in bulldozers and finish the other 9 holes, which Steve tells me they don't really need 3 more. They can split 1 hole to make it to 7, and then they just need 2 more. So while you've got all the equipment, they're doing that, you might as well put a couple runs in that hill and throw a tow rope in. It's not expensive. And then in the long run, we'll build a lodge that will serve the ski hill in the winter and the clubhouse for the golf course in the summer, so it's used year round. And then you can tie your trails back to town for cross-country skiing. Put a big rock fireplace in the lodge and have your hot chocolate there. And just do it in phases and work with our rich neighbors to help us build these things because they want them too. That's what I see as the newcomer, and you sure fooled me because I thought you had a ski hill. Oh, and I'm not finished, sorry, Fran. Don't give me the mic. That's all I want. Your library, is it in the right spot? How old is it? When was the last time it had new books? Is it time for a refresh? Is it? We haven't talked about the library yet, and it is part of your culture and your museum thing, so I think you had culture.
Mhm.
And do we need to look at getting grants in that whole culture area for a museum and library? Let's combine that. Build it in one facility. So I'll leave that one up there as well, because we haven't talked about the library yet. And I will help personally build the ski hill, because I want to go snowboard. And you want to get your kids active and make them in the next Olympics, build them a ski hill. We got some incredible kids here. And I think they love it.
I'm not gonna speak against the ski hill or the chalet. But as Kurt mentioned a second ago, things go in cycles. And so does funding. So if we can find a way to kind of connect all these things within our community, not just within the community, but how we can kind of become a hub for the region. The money is gonna come around again. And if we have the planning done, we have things designed that interlock and interconnect to kind of build off of each other, then fantastic, we just start pulling the trigger on it. So I think with respect to the rec center, I mean, I look at the location, you've got Aurora College, if we're gonna push Royal College to push more programs, create more programs, we're gonna have more students. Is right on the rec complex doorstep. Students wanna work out, they wanna be active. We just built 3 fields in front of the rec complex. So I think there's a way to extend the programs and maximize rec complex, but also plan for something new in the 25-year plan. So, if the community's gonna grow, then we have to think about the rec complex growing as well. But I'd also like to see all your programs too, because folks live here all year round too.
Did I throw something out there?
Let's hear.
How about some public washrooms that are just completely on their own and not attached to any other facility? Just basically where it's supposed to go in, wash their hands, is,
Any particular locations?
Chief Jim Creek Park would be a good spot. Probably on the other side of town would be good too.
Maybe by waterfront?
Yeah.
Areas.
Sure, people who know better would be able to pick better location. Seems like there's a need.
Just great discussion, guys. Love hearing all this. And yeah, like dream big, think big right now while we're talking about the plan. So there is anything else on this topic we can move on? Okay. Oh, I think that we jumped ahead. Yeah. Let's skip ahead. Yeah, I don't think this has been touched on yet. Yeah, any opportunities for a new town hall or fire hall expansion?
We just spent a bunch of money on
Oh. Yeah, so 2 years ago, the entire envelope of the building got redone. Including
windows?
all new windows, better insulation, new siding, the new, like the whole new face of the building, including the Delta braid, which includes kind of a marketing tie-in with the pavilion, the welcome sign, and all of the rest of it. As far as expansion, I don't think we've ever talked about expansion. Myself as a counselor, my understanding was that while the town office is 40+ years old, that the bones of the building were good enough to do the new envelope so that we could keep using the building for longer. But I mean, over 25 years, I mean, with the building that's already 40+ years old, maybe there is an opportunity for a new town hall and fire hall, or one or the other, but it's not something that's come across my mind before. But I mean, if the dollars are there and the need is there, I'm just not sure the need is there right now, as far as I understand it.
As somebody who inhabits it all, but also just if you are going to consider trying to extend the life of this building, it's also looking at structural components. Yes, the bones are good, but there are some components, for instance, sagging aprons where heavy trucks are starting to sink into. Okay. Not a concern right now, but it will be concern in the future if preventative maintenance isn't done. So there are a few things that I think we have to consider in terms of that fire hall. If you want to sustain it for longer, yes, but so there's lots of smaller areas. So you do need to consider it's not just the facing of the building, it's the actual structure as well. So plumbing, electrical, they're pretty good at, but plumbing for sure is another thing to consider in the future because it is aging industry.
I'm just kind of staying on the fire theme for a second. So it's typical that the height restrictions for a building are tied to your fire services. So if the community is thinking about growing a building, you can get 4 stories or 5 stories on your little lot. You need to look at improving your fire equipment. So it does kind of go hand in hand, and we're just talking
It's
now.
not necessarily the fire equipment is part of it, so you don't need to tolerate, it's also the pressure of the utility system. That's not what a concern is, because it's a bigger pump to pump on fire.
So even if we got your bigger truck and you had a new staff, we'd probably need to restore this business pressure.
I think that's an aspect that we have to consider, or multiple, in multiple ways. Each fire is different, yes, and it's demand, right? So it would depend, but in terms of anything higher, you have the capability with the truck, it's just, are we capable without the rain?
For sure. So at this point, I wouldn't recommend doing more than 3 stories, it's gonna cause a bunch of issues. But if people are starting to talk about going build higher density, more walkable, then this is something.
So if
that's
it's higher though, you can also accommodate the building via sprinklers, residential sprinklers that, everybody says this is the Arctic, it'll freeze. I don't know, it's pretty warm up here right now, but there are residential sprinklers that are zonally that would actually allow for a sprinkler system or other suppression systems in there to augment the fact that we can't get 9 stories high. Not that we would want 9 stories here anyway, nobody did like that. And again, understanding that the buildings you're already losing stories down, right? And so that's why the government building is probably the highest. Sorry, I can go on, I can go on because if you're looking, you're already losing a story just because of having to be on high rise. So there's some apartment buildings here, for instance, that look like they're 3-4 stories tall, but that's just the infrastructure that they there. So
You like a counselor. I wanna know, where did that nice sign go? We still have it?
Oh, that's a bad, broken old.
That particular sign has some bullet wounds.
Yeah.
But there was supposed to be a new sign that went up after the envelope was finished, so maybe it's somewhere or it's in the works.
My
There,
office is right beside the reception at downstairs, and I heard so many people come to the door and say they couldn't find our building. Tourists, people that work here that want to pay something. So I was gonna say.
there is supposed to be a sign.
It's a nice sign.
And I know we've talked about a few other buildings in town that could use some love and care. Is there anything else that was missed that needs to be looked at? Any other public works buildings or anything? Yeah, are there any changes needed in the community regarding dog sleds or mushers? Any dog kennels, those type of things?
I'll just add, I'm not familiar with what goes on here, but it became a big issue in Yellowknife, so we just kind of added it just ahead of time and is anticipating there could be some conflicting opinions.
I think animal control as an issue is its own thing aside from dog mushers. I don't know if we have issues with dog mushers as much. We do.
there are a couple where if the animals are, say, out at somebody's camp or out on the delta, and they will bring them into town, say during the flooding or something like that. It's actually finding accessible space for the number of dogs that they have, still keeping them out of town where they're not disturbing anybody in town, but actually finding space where they can legally put the dogs. Sometimes it's people's private property where they said, yes, you can, but other times it's been difficult for some individuals to find their dogs as well.
It's a long term, it's kind of like an interim step.
We usually make it not long term.
Should there be a long term?
I think that would be something more appropriate to actually ask the people who have the dog teams what they would see happen that way.
And we don't want to make a map out of nothing, but we had a nice experience. That's, yeah.
And I don't know if it's in our bylaws already of where they can have, where folks can have dog teams themselves, but to my experience in town, most of them are on the outskirts of the residential or industrial areas. Well, and that's industrial, right? So,
That
yeah.
was covered in a previous bylaw.
oh, it is in the
Area
bylaw.
of town designated for dog use.
Okay.
Wasn't one of which.
Yeah, so it appears that there could be some opportunities for redevelopment of underutilized sites in the downtown core and some residential areas. Should these be continue to be used for residential, or are there opportunities for mixed use developments or other things?
I mean, I would love to see opportunity in some spaces for the mixed use of commercial and residential. You know, like we do have at least one location in town that used to be just a commercial or just a residential home, and now it houses a hair salon downstairs. So I think that's a really good option from a residential to then come forward for a, I don't know if they needed a special permission in the bylaw or how that happened. And I think that those types of businesses work well in residential areas, so maybe having more opportunity for things like that. When it's an empty lot, it's a little tougher to say, but if that person, when they're coming for their development permit, who did buy a lot, is asking for that combination, then maybe having council be more open to those types of things would be a good thing. Other underused spaces in town, I think Duck Lake Park is a great space that doesn't get used all that much. Again, maybe if there can be a playground or some more development of some sort there might be good. We had fire pits in the parks a couple years ago, and those seem to be a good thing, but those, at least one of them or two of them have disappeared, so I don't know if that's something we could do. Maybe I'll just leave it for now. I'm sure other people have ideas of unused or underused spaces.
Or consider any options for incentives for people to develop.
I just thought of one more is, and it's not a town property, but at the gun range. Might be an opportunity for either regional competitions or things like that, or user groups that do use the range, and so. Having that as something as an option, I mean, as Kurt alluded to, a lot of folks are hunters in our area, and so. Not necessarily the same gun, but an opportunity to learn to shoot and things like that might be, you know, having a safe legal space for people to do those types of things is maybe an opportunity for someone.
Okay, move on then. Yeah, so nearing the end of our questions here, is there anything else that we haven't brought? Oh, Amanda, you can jump in if I can say anything.
No, you were doing great, but I just kind of wanted to spur the conversation, so I had two ideas. Yeah, we don't know the context, and I do have questions. Imagine because you have an off-season road now, you don't have as many people coming in and set up camps for that one winter road, but do you get seasonal construction crews coming up here? Do you get work camps, something that you would look for? Is that even an issue there?
I didn't hear anything.
Seasonal roads and work camps is still a thing.
Do we have housing? Is that an issue for people that need to come out here and work on construction crews or not necessarily stay in a hotel? They need to be out where the construction's happening.
Most companies have their own.
And they build it out in the field. It's nothing that they'll be.
Some are in the field and some are in town.
Okay.
There's one. There's three main tabs right now.
So that's probably something that's not like I just need for work.
Let's talk about it. There's actually a one.
So the location of the pre-existing ones works for people, or is it really not? Okay. Maybe we'll put work camps on.
Out of town is a better place for it to work counts. Yeah,
And also, this is different, but like storage and lay down yards, so people bring in their equipment and then they just materials and stuff. And they wants to use it. Is that a problem with him?
there's lots of residential, I mean, industrial.
Yeah, I think the need for an actual truck stop is a pretty big issue that the community's been wanting, or actually the truckers more than the community, but I mean, that would be a great, I think there's a location outside of town that could probably be suitable for that. I don't know, somebody could create a husky or something out there. I mean,
So
it
you're
would
thinking
be
like a
that
proper
though.
truck stop with like the the showers that they use, maybe somewhere that they.
Absolutely.
For a bit.
Absolutely, just somewhere they can pull over and get a bite to eat, adjust their loads. See a friendly face.
Thanks, Amanda. And yeah,
So we talked about tiers, and we talked about everything else going on, our community plans, houses. Hotels, one thing we haven't talked about, tourism, or anything with our community plan is to rally the Yukon government to fix the highway. You can't attract tourism if you have shit roads. And they are horrible roads, and this is our lifeline to feed us, look after us, bring our goods here, bring our food, bring our tourists, our loved ones, everything. That's something we should be sticking our community plan. How do we rally the Yukon government to 100% improve their roads to make them safer? Less, because of the cost, I'm a trucker, the cost is only going up with the more they need the roads. So that's one big thing we have not discussed as a community with our tourism, our planning. All summer, it's so poorly maintained, it's destroying everything. Like trucks are doing 3 trips and having $20,000 damage, just for an example, to repair, which is not sustainable. And that cost ends up to be all of us, the end users. That quarter milk or cabbage, whatever you get, that's the end users paying way more for it. When we're to approach our, it just kind of thought, when we approach our tourism, we have to get better roads. Not only the community, the Dempster, everywhere. Just better roads, like chip sealing our bypass, for example, with all the dust. That's another one, right? If we chip seal the bypass, it'll the dust that floats around the community, people with allergies, people breathing. It's some days the bypass is, it's like it's on fire, but it's actually dust. There's so many improvements to do for tourists. Chip sealing 10 kilometers a year going outside of Inuvik on the Dempster, say, or the ITH, that's improvements for tourism. But it's something we have to look at is that Yukon highway. That's our lifeline, and it's horrible. Some days it's beautiful to look at, some days it's horrible.
I thought it was our understanding that the Yukon government was gonna do something and was gonna actually start partaking in the upkeep of their side of the road.
That was my
That over to Councilor.
That was from
Mayor Wood.
Northern Premiers Conference.
Yeah.
The Northern Premiers Conference, the Premier of the Yukon committed to fixing their side of the Dempster, so we'll wait and see. So far, they haven't done much.
They always commit to fixing it.
Eric hasn't. Eric's the one who asked the question and yeah, so we're give Eric credit. One thing I think we need is some type of commercial storage facility, cold and heated. We do have, there are some issues on that end. Yeah, easily be by that. Both residential needs for it, but certainly some commercial needs for it as well. Yeah. Thank you.
anything else that hasn't been brought up today that we should consider or know about?
It's Councilor Miro. I think any development we do, we need to make sure that Inuvik remains walkable.
Since I've been here, I've also heard the idea talked about a couple of times about having a permanent, military family base. 115 families. Base, that's good for our economy, good for our tax revenue.
I just had an oddball question. We're talking about community plan, making everything better for all the residents and, all these beautiful things that we want to improve upon. But coming from my perspective and what I see every day where I work, and places that we look after is the impact of the homeless community on our community. And that I think should be a big part of our community plan.
Not only that, but for their own safety. So for instance, we do have a warning shelter that gets to capacity in the winter time. So we do have the risk of frostbite and 30 spots. It's not just a building though, that's a whole social economic issue as well, but and social services aspect, but there are some vulnerable people in our communities, and what are we doing, even shade, I mean, I know a lot of them right now are using the pavilion, and they're doing nothing but sitting in the pavilion, they're simply sitting in the shade, because they have nowhere else to sit. When it's super hot out, or even just access to water or anything like that. It's some consideration, not just because of the behavior, but also for their own vulnerability as well.
We need a treatment center like we used to have. Alcohol and drugs. But it's one thing when we walk around town, we'll see a lot of things going on. It's a lot of street people there, but we used to have a treatment center and it works. I believe we need another one. And everyone goes, well, they can ship them out, they can send them self. You see, that's the problem. Not everybody wants to go self. Not all the locals or ordinary or aboriginals do not want to leave their own community. The other belief I have is if you send them out to be treated, they come back and they're back into their old group. But if you treat them when they're in their group while they're here, it has a better impact. We had a treatment center called Delta House, and it worked. It did well. But I think we need another one. I think we need to very much in this day and age, everything that's going on, and everybody sees it. It's time for a treatment center. That would be a good community plan to rally for with the government, whether it's a territorial, whoever, but we need.
Thanks for sharing those. I know we're talking about a lot of fun and exciting things, but yeah, just bringing back to what the community needs to help a lot of people is something that we should be addressing in the plan. I'll just leave the floor open for just another round to see if there's anything else that's been missed today. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if anybody needs to go for a walk, stretch, or we can keep going forward with just talking about the zoning bylaw and looking a bit more closely at the specific regulations that can impact building types, for instance. We were kind of talking high level, we'll bring it down a little bit to the zoning bylaw now. Yeah, great. No, we're good. Let's go.
Yeah.
So now you guys, we printed out another large copy of that, I think.
I don't think we shared that.
But if you want, I can pass it out. So your zoning bylaw, complies and follows what your community plan says, the color should all match up. Can you just go to the next slide? So basically the things that we would be looking at, see if they're right now, or they're missing, or need to be updated, are things like lot coverage. So if you have, I use small numbers because of my brain. If you want to have like a 200 square foot lot, and you wanted to put like a 10 by 10, building on there, maybe you can't because it's covering too much of the lot. I don't know if you need lot coverage rules. Many municipalities have them. Maybe it's not worth being something that you fight people with here. Building heights and setbacks. pretty much coming from a security safety point of view, so, yeah, we talk about fire quite a bit, so I'll leave it at that. It also has to do with, snow clearing when that happens, and just making sure people have enough, I don't want to turn the vehicles around without like causing accidents on the road. Parking requirements, so let's say you're building a new restaurant, it was gonna have 50 seats in it, but somewhere down south, they have a calculation that says for every seat, you need to put this many parking spots at the front. A lot of communities are getting away from that, and I would recommend us doing that here. So long as there's some on-street parking, parking requirements basically for these really large surface parking lots, if you're downtown, that aren't a good use of space. Design regulations, kind of already asked about that, and what I'm getting the bylaw is we don't want to make too many rules, we just want to let people get on with their lives and live them. So we might have things that say, you can't build something that's a starship, but other than that, as long as it's got 4 walls and a roof, good to go. And then landscaping, so in Land, for example, because it's all rocky there, you don't expect people to go around and plant trees. If you keep some rocks or some of the natural facing things, that does towards landscaping. But to make sure things look nice, we do want to see a little bit of something being done, particularly when commercial businesses are being built for industrial businesses. Kind of want to hide all of your like heavy duty storage behind the building, so when you're driving by, you see kind of nicer crowd. So won't get into it today. But if there's rules that people complain to you that are just too difficult or too hard to follow, or if you yourself are trying to build something that isn't silly, let's talk about rules that are working and aren't working. Otherwise, we'll do a quick review and make some recommendations. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think we've got like a little handout sheet that you can write some stuff and give it back to us, but just in the interest of time, like if you think there's something that should be in the zoning bylaw, let's make sure it's in there. I don't know if your zoning bylaw right now has a definition for adult entertainment or anywhere that allows it, but those will be things that we make sure that if council is in favor, if the community wants it, we'll start adding things into it. Another thing that's been coming up all over the territory are like cannabis stores. Don't know if people are in favor of that here, but it's something we could add as a use in zoning bylaw. And again, we could even maybe pick what types of zones it goes in. You probably don't want it in all of your residential, but those are the things that are.
And I mean, if your bylaw is working flawlessly and there are no changes to be made, let us know. But yeah, if there are things that just aren't working, or maybe some areas that need some polish and updating, that's what we're here for.
One spot I saw that needs some polishing and some. I think it's in our territory, in our municipal boundaries as well, as there's a road that goes down to Airport Lake. And it was the absolute traffic jam. So I don't know if there's something that needs to be zoned there or made into a park or a parking lot. I don't know, but it seems like a very dangerous place. As a newcomer, when I went down there, I found it hard to even turn around. So. And according to this map, that location is in our town boundary.
Which is sure nice to know.
Yeah, especially that's gonna be nice. and flat.
Someone's been doing it for free the last few years, but anyways.
Is that government road or is that a?
Well, that's the thing. So the road used to be private road for the quarries. That's why there's that old gate there. And that's been ignored for many, many years. And
Responsible to.
that no one has ever claimed responsibility. No one takes responsibility for that area. That's why there's no garbage bins. That's why there's no garbage pickup. There's no, I mean, the people who use it generally clean up. The GNWT has come a couple of times, at least 3 times now, and done some consultation on developing that area, whether it be a picnic day use area or something else. So that almost gives the impression that they're claiming that that is their land for their development. SAO comes in new and sees it as part of the town's right, so is it our land to develop? It's an interesting conversation to have, because certainly as a user,
Well, I
would
know,
love to see more parking, more things happen there.
well, I know that if it's in our town boundary and somebody gets squished between 2 trucks and a boat trailer because they're trying to turn around and can't see where they're going, they're gonna point the fingers at us
Absolutely.
from a liability perspective. So I don't know if there's an opportunity in this planning to carve out a parking lot at the top And the only use down below is to go launch, but you gotta park top and build a parking lot up top, just to get rid of the congestion.
So I understand it's the road width it's too narrow, or
It's-
this just the turnaround?
It's really good, and there's just a volume from the vehicles that are down there in that space,
Okay.
as well as the boats or the trailers, boat trailers. So there's a lot of traffic, a lot of people using the space and.
Mhm.
Yeah, so one of the things we'll probably do is try to follow up with the NWT and find out where they're at.
I'll show you, yeah.
I think it was, you correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that kind of carved out of the side of the base of the hill there? Where the launch was down?
Yeah, many years.
Yeah, so that's the reason of it was just an exit point, for somebody to get into the lakes. There's no room literally for anybody to turn around in there.
Well, I think it's a wonderful asset, like if it is our town property, I think it's a tremendous asset. How many people have a lake
All the time.
5 minutes outside of town where you can go swimming, kayaking, boating? It's a
It should be
wonderful,
14 minutes out of time at least.
it's a wonderful asset, and if it is ours, I'd put washrooms, garbage cans, fish cleaning station, and put a parking lot there, make it.
Yeah. Oh, you keep saying 42 people.
Otherwise, we'll be sitting here having another conversation one day about somebody who got hurt.
You're just being facetious.
You could develop a problem being there, you got a creek and drainage there. There's a creek and drainage on the left side, so that's as far as you can go. So you'd have to go to the right and you'd have to do some drilling, some digging, some big machinery.
To get a parking lot up top.
Oh, up top there. There's another problem with that is you got a 60 meter from the water line. That's, you got a spot to apply for special permits. It can be all done, just saying it's all rock and require blasting or digging. I don't know, to put a parking lot on top. The challenge. Not much room on top. But there could be creativity to build something.
Well, as we empty out the quarry,
Try.
they build
Nothing nice.
a campsite up there
I don't
with
know.
parking, and then you just walk down to the water and go.
It was one of the things that we said, as the big
Pie in the
project at
sky.
the airport's going. If you got together with the government, the town and ITI, and instead of having a big hole in the ground, you develop something positive out of something you built. As in a campground or parking lots or a boat launch or something. That's something that I brought up before, and it's something that the town, the government and ITI should all get involved in. Instead of wasting money doing things, they can recoup something like this, right? And I think it'd be a great idea if you could get together and try and do that.
Is one of the quarries there, is it a town? Rock quarry, or is it
It's government,
still GNWT?
but
We have a stockpile.
it'll be
at one
pitted up,
point.
it'll be pitted out when we're done. So it'll be depleted, so you'll have an old rock quarry, but something you can make something out of. Well, it'll be nice,
Do you know when it's the life is done? Like is it this year, next year?
3 years. Approximately.
Depending on the rate.
How much there is.
I'll try to get through in 10 minutes, I'm ready to go home to bed. We're done with the community plan and the zoning bylaw stuff. We're gonna talk a little bit about the money. So that's CMHC, Community Mortgage Housing, Moderation. Corporate. So they have some money. They have an application, that's open right now until August the 18th. It's literally called the Housing Accelerator Fund, and there are 2 streams. You guys fall under the small rural northern indigenous stream. It doesn't really matter. Can you go to the next slide, please, Cameron? So I'm not reading all these words to you. But the primary objective is to create more housing and faster, and to stop getting people away from building the housing. So three kind of main points, develop these complete communities. So that would be walkable and that would be a mix of uses and, some other adjectives. The other one would be affordable, so you would have to have, inclusiveness, has to be equitable, so we were talking about some affordable housing, housing for others. And then, low carbon climate resilient communities, so we didn't really get into the nuts of that, but, trying to find any ways for northern communities to be more energy efficient. Those are kind of at a high level, but the funding is there to support. And to do this as part of the application, we need to come up with an action plan. And within that action plan, we need to describe what we want to use the money for and how. So everything on your left is what money from the government or from CMHC will cover. Just have to make an argument and basically write a plan around it. So if you put it in your action plan, they'll fund it. If it's specifically for affordable housing, they'll fund it. If you need to build infrastructure related to that housing, so you need to lower new roads, probably doing some geotechnical and testing, support all the prep work, they will cover that. I think you can hire a consultant, they'll pay for part of that. I don't know if there's anything else I kind of missed of my quick overview there. But before I go to the next slide, are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
With prepping the site, for instance, say there was a very large field in the middle of town that has. They're like, well, yes, that will support them.
I would make the argument that yes, yes.
And does that also include your own with environmental contaminants, so tearing them down and sort of that?
I think we need to make arguments, and then I think CMHC would have to basically either approve or not approve it. So what a lot of time happens is you put this big application together, and then at a very high level, they're like, yes, we approve it, but then you go into negotiation, come back and forth over dollars and cents, and whatever. So my opinion is yes, we put that all in, and we ask for all the dollars and cents to cover that.
Well, there's wastewater, there's solid waste.
Great list.
You know, the solid waste, you know, that's all the stuff that as we grow, we need.
Yeah.
So you can get up to $55,000 per new unit added under this program, and it's non-repayable grant, so. We are working together very closely with Dylan to make sure we put in a nice big application for the biggest ask we possibly can. And tomorrow I'm supposed to receive a letter back from ACOM in Edmonton, identifying whether or not we can destroy, just level it, the Talile, without having to actually go in and remediate all the asbestos in there. Shouldn't have it in this room. If that's the case, then the brownfield definition would fall under demolishing something that's considered a brownfield. Problem is, we're going to get ownership of that, and I'm working on that too.
And the reason we brought this to the tail end of our conversation is many of those things on the list are what we covered with you in terms of your community planning, upgrading. Next slide, please. I know this slide's terrible and very small. So you guys only need to pick 5 actions to put into the action plan. My colleague Dustin and I, met with Michael, we were talking about kind of some things we thought might be good actions, and I'm just gonna put together this larger list. We will leave this list with you all as pencil, but getting some input or feedback on kind of what the top 4 or 5 would be the easy one, or the easy ones collectively that we've been to. Then we probably and again, write the action plan around those.
Can we get this list in an email?
Yeah,
You just brainstorm this list and
Yeah,
get something on paper. There's one on there that you can't remove though. And that's number 2. That would stay on.
That's the most affordable. It is, because there is a lot, town, a lot of lots we will. I think
The
we're
return on
increasing
investment would be pretty good.
I think we're increasing our
Agrees.
footprint and our infrastructure utilities are easy access.
I think that great line.
So you said number.
It's needed.
I think we were just talking about number 12.
After we get our money.
Yeah.
I've heard goal number 2, goal number 3, and goal number 12. Maybe.
I think 6.
7, 1, 4, 8, 9, 11.
So all of them?
10, 13, and 17. Oh, 17 is not on there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, we'll certainly email this around. This is not your only chance to chat with us, but I will remind you that the deadline for the application is the 18th, so we need to start doing some work this week pretty aggressively, and when our colleague Dustin comes back for town on Thursday, Friday, he's probably gonna sit down with Michael and start really getting the gears going on this.
Okay.
I have just a question about funding. About a month ago, Whitehorse announced that they were building a $33 million gymnastics and climbing facility, and 31.2 million was covered by the federal government, and the government of Yukon threw in 2.5 million. And at that type of pay-through rate from the feds, I thought, and I did ask the question to our previous SAO, and he says that we dipped into it for something smaller, but I am wondering if there are these options or possibilities of the federal government coming in and taking up to 85% of a large infrastructure build here in Inuvik, particularly in the recreation end. Thank you.
We can talk to them. I think once you start to put something on paper and say this is within our community, what we want to see here, I think that's when the doors open up, we can have those conversations. Again, it makes it easier for housing to know what they can build.
Not housing. I am thinking more recreation. Like I said, the example I'm giving you is like I said, it's almost 90% was covered by the feds. So basically you're saying you have a solid business plan, they'll take to look at something like that. So that money might be out there if we came up with $50 million estimate. Maybe, okay.
That's it. That's all from us. That's how I get a hold of them. And we'll also be wandering around the county until Friday at lunch.
Yeah. Plan this at 2 or something.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you. Thanks for having a special meeting with us.
And I'll just say the documents you can keep, the brochures, provide a little high level overview of what we're looking to do. There's a tearaway sheet on the last page if you want to give us any comments as well. And we'll
If you
be,
vote on this, wanted to share, yes, we will gladly fill out on the second page.
we're going
Your own
to,
notes, go for it.
yeah, we'll leave it to you.
If there are no further questions, I need a motion to adjourn. Councilor Gowan, second by Councilor Lane. All in favor? Motion carried.
Ready to go.
So.